12 in the game, but they completed the three-point play for Ricky Tarrant. We thought about it. Tarrant on D. Udofia trying to free himself up. Shot clock to 2. Royal the runner. Udofia fighting on the inside against 2 and 3 Green Wave players. We'll keep it at this end of the floor. Callahan. Second on Callahan.
I'll tell you what I like most about that possession. With only 4 seconds on the clock, Julian Royal is a shooter, a guy that can knock down threes. But instead of taking a wild, crazy, uncontested three-pointer, he put the ball on the floor and attacked the basket. And by doing so, he gave his teammate an opportunity in Rufai Udofia to get an offensive rebound. So you got to like the maturity by Royal, although Udofia does not capitalize at the free throw line.
Udofia only with 2 points, and those coming in the first half. Had a chance with the young man prior to the game. He feels he is responsible to lead this Georgia Tech team and improve on what they did last year. He runs the break here. Udofia trying to drive, and he takes it right to the rim.
And Udofia, you talked him up. You said he only had 2 points, so he had to go get some more. But also, he's done a very good job defending Ricky Tarrant. He's the one that gets the responsibility of having to guard the best perimeter player for the opposing team. So doing a good job on Tarrant so far in this one.
The lead is now 16. Biggest of the game for Georgia Tech, but there is a foul on the play. Marcus Georges Hunt. Second on Hunt.
And that's one of the luxuries that Coach Gregory has this year. And so we talked about that earlier today with the fact that he has players now. He's got enough guys to be able to send out there. So foul trouble is not as big of an issue. And he can coach his players to be more aggressive. If you get the foul, don't worry. We've got another guy coming in to back you up.
Both teams currently in the bonus. Kendall Timmons, senior from Fort Worth, Texas. Carter Jr. grabs it. Udofia sees Miller running the floor, finds his man, Georges Hunt, and he bends the rim.
And you see the intent by Georgia Tech to push the ball up the floor. Great pass by Udofia, getting the hockey assist because Miller actually gets the assist. But great attack by Georgia Tech, running the floor. Daniel Miller doing a great job keeping his hands up, giving his passer a target.
So impressed with the way Daniel Miller runs the court. Sometimes he runs and scores, sometimes he runs and starts the play and gets an assist. Either way, it's productive.
And either way, it puts pressure on the opposing team's defense to make sure they get back.
Couple of bodies go to the floor, and who scoops it up but Daniel Miller, who's got 6 assists in the game to go along with his double-double, points and rebounds. Carter Jr. with position.
It's just nothing they can do with Georgia Tech inside. And really the size advantage for Georgia Tech when they go to the bench, when Tulane goes to the bench and Davis is not in the game or Brujas not in the game, they have no match for Miller and whoever else is in the game, whether it's Hosley, Royal, or Carter.
The lead was 9 at halftime for Georgia Tech. It is now 19. Reed twisting toward the rim.
And that's another one. Reed attacking the rim. Georgia Tech has not settled for a bunch of three-pointers, but attacked the rim this evening here, and it has paid off well dividends for them.
Brandon Reed with it.
They fought off the jitters and the nervous energy, and they come out and played a really clean basketball game. Turnovers was a huge issue for Georgia Tech in the past. Right now, under 10 turnovers so far, 9. And so from that standpoint, they've done a great job handling the basketball.
Georgia Tech is on an 8-1 run. Tulane without a field goal for the last 2 minutes and 40 seconds. They've got the basketball, but trail 72-51 as we approach the 4-minute mark of the second half from McCamish Pavilion. Josh Davis, who is the leading scorer for Tulane with 21, all the way to the basket. A strong move from Davis.
He's been stuck on 21 for a while, now at 23, but he's really been neutralized over the past few minutes, but now matches a career high with 23 points.
Philadelphia surveying the landscape for Georgia Tech. Carter Jr. got tangled up with Davis. Wanted the jump ball, did not get it. He's playing with 3 fouls.
And I believe that's why he didn't attack the ball a little more aggressively, because he knows he has those 3 and can't pick up another one.
Philadelphia rattles it home.
Buffon hasn't taken many shots tonight, but stepping up, knocking down a big jumper there, and doing a great job of running this team, running the show. That's what Coach Gregory wants him to do. He feels as though they have enough scorers around him, especially with Bolden and Marcus Georges Hunt. And so therefore, Udoka just has to run the team.
Inside of 3 minutes now. The Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech looking for the historic first ever win in McCamish Pavilion. Carter Jr. with a rejection. Back to Tulane. Tarrant. Bolden got a piece of Tarrant. Timeout on the floor on Cremen's Court. Georgia Tech comfortably in front. Game the first ever contested at McCamish Pavilion. The grand opening tonight. You see other scores from around the ACC tonight. There are 4 teams in the ACC ranked in the top 25. The initial polls coming out. North Carolina is one of them, and leading Gardner-Webb. Wake Forest is ahead of Radford. It is a big night. Most of the ACC teams kicking off the season tonight, including NC State, ranked as high as 6th in the nation, and Duke number 8 against Georgia State. Very early, Maryland and Kentucky, which is ranked 3rd in the country, had to replace 6 NBA draft picks, and they're ranked 3rd in the nation.
Because he replaced them with 6 more NBA draft picks.
He certainly did. Watch for the names Nerlens Noel and Willie Cauley-Stein during the course of the season. We certainly wish Maryland all the best against the Kentucky Wildcats tonight. Again, that is early from the Barclays Center. Udoka trying to beat the buzzer.
Really like the way Buffon Udoka has played here tonight. He's been very under control, understood that he needed to defend, but here over the last couple minutes has picked it up a little more offensively. Actually, since you called him out, he scored 6 points since then.
As I said, I did have a chance to chat with him prior to the game, and he just couldn't wait to get started in McCamish Pavilion. And he has 8 points in total, 6 in the second half. Josh Davis, who just scored for Tulane, now has 25 as he continues to increase on his new career high.
In my opinion, of course, I'm biased, is the best conference in college basketball. It is just, another selling point for Georgia Tech in order to be able to bring high-quality talent into this program.
Now, figuratively, during the course of the season, they may blow the roof off of this place. But as Corey mentioned, the roof is the only thing that remains from the original Alexander Coliseum and those support stanchions and that signature roof. The rest of it has been refurbished and upgraded. Multi-million-dollar project completed. The doors opening tonight. Just a beautiful facility for college basketball. It is Bolden on the cut. Give him 12 for the evening.
And I'll tell you what else went under renovation. Georgia Tech's offense. Because these guys are executing very well. They look good offensively here this evening. And Brian Gregory has to be very happy with the way his team has performed. He was very concerned about whether they were going to be too nervous and too antsy. But they have come out and performed very well.
27 now for Josh Davis. This Georgia Tech basketball program has played its games on this site since 1956. We give a nod to 55 seasons of Alexander Memorial Coliseum and victory number 1 in McCamish Pavilion in the final 37 seconds for the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech closing in on the historic victory here at McCamish. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to do the first game here at the new facility.
It really has. And we've had the great treatment by all the Georgia Tech staff, all the people. And they've done a great job putting this night together. And special thanks to Bobby Crimmins and John Sally both for joining us as well.
Turner now with 16. This victory by Georgia Tech is going to snap a 3-game winning streak in the series for Tulane as we have a player down. It is Ricky Tarrant.
Tarrant has been cramping up all night, so I'm hoping that's only cramps. But he's got 14 points in the second half. He's really stepped it up here, but I'm just hoping that's just cramps that he has. But it looks like he's been grabbing at those toes and trying to stretch his legs out for the remainder. A lot of the second half.
Well, there's no question he's integral to the success of the Tulane Green Wave this season, which only won 3 conference games last year. They didn't win their first 9 to start the season last year, which included this victory against Georgia Tech in New Orleans a season ago.
Then they lost Bruja, and a couple games later they lost Timmons, and the injury bug is really what got them. They started off 12-2. The injury bug hit them, and they end up, struggling throughout the remainder of the season. That's been the story for Coach Conroy. Both seasons he's been there. He's looking forward to a greater year this year.
So a couple of substitutions. Peak and Doyle are into the game as they attend to Tarrant on that Tulane bench area. Aaron Peak is a sophomore from Atlanta, Georgia, as is Brooks Doyle. He's a freshman from Atlanta, Georgia. So they are in for the final 14 seconds. Brooks Doyle, a walk-on this Georgia Tech program. So all those famous players and coaches who came out for this momentous evening going away with smiles on their faces. The first win of the season and the first ever here at McCamish Pavilion with 14 seconds even to go here in the contest. Doyle, an immediate double team. And a foul was called on the play.
Doyle with the opportunity to put some points on the board. You got to be excited. The crowd loves it. They want to see the walk-on get some points on the board. Probably one of the guys who they'll be chanting his name in blowouts. Hopefully, for Georgia Tech fans, they'll be up blowing teams out, not necessarily on the other way.
Brooks Doyle at the line, shooting 1 and 1.
The applause for Brooks Doyle.
With the big smile from Brooks Doyle. He's excited about that.
1 of 2 for Doyle. Royal saved it.
And the game ends the way it started. Georgia Tech beating Tulane up on the offensive glass.
So McCamish Pavilion christened with a victory for Brian Gregory's Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech. 79-61 the final. This season, Corey, will say Tech across the chest.
Honoring the 50s, 60s, and 70s uniforms of the Georgia Tech Ramblin' Wreck, and I'm sure these guys are excited. I can only imagine the butterflies jumping around right now.
Georgia Tech in the white, Tulane in the green. It'll be Davis against Daniel Miller for Georgia Tech on the opening tap as Buzz makes his way through the crowd.
Can't have a game without Buzz. Buzz had to come over in renovation.
The distinctive white wall that separated the fans from the court is gone, and the opening tap is controlled by the Tulane Green Wave. Number 2 is Ricky Tarrant. 14.9 points per game to go, along with 3.6 rebounds a season ago for Tulane, which went 15 and 16, but just 3 and 13 in conference play.
You mentioned that 15 and 16. They started out 9-0 in that 9th win, of course, against Georgia Tech last year.
Fight for the loose ball. They're going to get a foul against Georgia Tech, a correction against Tulane. It'll be Josh Davis with his first.
Josh Davis, no stranger to this area. Josh Davis was a transfer from NC State, so he's played against Georgia Tech, played against them again last time in Alexander Memorial Coliseum, and I'm sure he's excited about coming out playing against these guys this evening.
He sees the floor a lot for Tulane, over 34 minutes per game a season ago, the most on the club. This is Reed driving and dishing to Miller, who ran into a double team. Here comes the wave. Davis couldn't do it himself. Callahan gets cut off by Mufon Udofia, wearing 0 for Georgia Tech. Bruja kicks it out.
Right now, they haven't recognized they have a mismatch, but they just fixed it because Robert Carter was having to guard one of the guards. Now a matchup with Davis.
Davis to the basket for the first bucket in McCamish history.
And that's one of the things that Coach Brian Gregory was concerned about was Davis's ability to be able to put the ball on the floor and go by Robert Carter. So he knew it would be a little bit of baptism by fire for Carter in his first game.
Davis, who averaged close to a double-double last season, 11.2 points and just over 9 rebounds per game for the Green Wave. Georgia Tech last year 11-20, 4-12 in conference play, and they were 3-8 at Phillips Arena. They're home away from home for last season in a foul against Tulane. That'll be Ricky Tarrant.
But for all intents and purposes, playing at Phillips Arena was a struggle for Georgia Tech last year. They were better offensively on the road than they were, which was their home court at Phillips.
So to the line, it is Marcus Georges-Hunt.
Marcus Georges-Hunt at the line, shooting 2.
Marcus Georges-Hunt is, according to Coach Gregory, a big-time talent. I tell you what, he's a pretty bold guy to come in and wearing number 3. There have been some very special players wearing that number 3 jersey here at Georgia Tech. Travis Best, Stephon Marbury, just to name a few. It's been some guys, some big-time players to put that number on, but I like the fact that the young fella came in and said, I'm going to wear that badge of honor here at Georgia Tech.
Speaking of great players, there are over 100 former Georgia Tech players and coaches in the building tonight to open up McCamish Pavilion. $50 million refurbishing Alexander Coliseum, and this is the result, and it is sparkling and beautiful. Trying to go up top. Daniel Miller got in the way, but Bruja picked it up and rocked the rim.
And that's exactly what Coach Conroy was talking about. He missed with Bruja. That size, there's nothing you can do about that. And the big fella has the ability to finish at the rim as well.
Only played 9 games last year because of a knee injury. He is from the Czech Republic, but played junior college basketball in Iowa, the home state of the head coach for Tulane, Ed Conroy. Second effort, no good. Miller has a third shot at it. The tip is up and good. It is Marcus Georges-Hunt.
And Georges-Hunt showing his activity early as well as some athletic ability. And that's one of the things Georgia Tech is going to have to do. They're going to have to try to pound Tulane on the interior.
Georges-Hunt with all of the points so far for Georgia Tech. Bruja from short range. Reed will pull it up for Tech. Miller thought about trying to go to Robert Carter, who wears number 4. Miller on cleanup duty.
That's Coach Gregory's one guy, his sustainability right there. Daniel Miller started all 62 games over the last 2 years, and the one guy he knows what type of production he's going to get night in and night out.
142 career blocks for Miller after he gets his first bucket. That's 6th in school history. Doing it on the defensive end in the early going against Tulane as Bruja tries to back down. Jordan Callahan. Shot clock to 7. Davis in traffic. Shot was altered by Miller. Off the fingertips of Robert Carter and out of bounds.
And that's a little jitters. You can see that Robert Carter, of course, wants to do well. His first game is from Atlanta. Seems as though everyone on this Georgia Tech team is at least from the state. But Robert Carter from Atlanta wants to have a big show here in his first game. A little bit of jitters going.
Brian Gregory starting his 2nd year on the bench for Georgia Tech. He was also the head coach at Dayton and an 8-year assistant at Michigan State, which included its run to the national championship in 2000. 10th year as a head coach for Brian Gregory as they opened the new building, the refurbished new building on the site of Alexander Coliseum. Callahan ripped down by Georges-Hunt. Chris Bolden wears number 11. He is into the game. Also Camion Holsey. This is his first attempt. And Dry comes down with it for Tulane.
And that's one of going to be the interesting things about Georgia Tech this year. See how Holsey adapts to coming off the bench. He's a guy who started pretty much every game, especially last year. So from that standpoint, he's got a new role coming off the bench.
Got into double figures 15 times last year as well. The jump shooter is fouled by Udofia, and that is Ricky Tarrant. So when we come back, he's going to the free throw line. Georgia Tech has a 2-point lead as we open up McCamish.
I think those veterans are well aware now and will not take for granted home games anymore. Sometimes you can go to a home game and say, hey, we're playing at home, don't worry about it. We won't take that for granted anymore. We know how special playing at home is, and now in the McCamish Pavilion, it's going to be even more special.
And it's more special, but one of the things, your routine is so thrown off by having to go to Phillips, having to get on the bus, or stay in a hotel the night before. It's so many different things that go on playing on your own campus. So the routine in itself, and Coach Gregory in building this routine for his team, now he can get in place what he wants them to do on a daily basis.
Tarrant, who was fouled before we went to break by Udofia, which that is his first, getting 3 free throws here. Shot 78% from the line a season ago as Ed Conroy looks on. Conroy is in his 3rd season as the head coach of the Green Wave.
You mentioned Tarrant. He had his coming out party last year against Georgia Tech. 24 points in their 9th game of the season, where they stopped the winning streak afterwards, but he had a huge game, knocking down 6 out of 7 threes.
Led all scorers in that game, a 57-52 win at Tulane last season for the Green Wave, which has won 3 in a row in the series. Fight on the boards. Holsey fouled, no bucket. He will go to the line.
That's one of the advantages that Georgia Tech had a lot last year. Holsey and Miller both on the offensive rebounding, and these guys are very active. But Coach Gregory also talked about the depth that they have, and rebounding is the strength. That's what Brian Gregory's calling card is. He wants his team to defend and rebound on both ends of the floor. And you see Holsey being very active. He also improved on his free throws at the end of the year and steps up and knocks down the first one here.
Holsey, who shot 53% from the line a season ago. He is from Sparta, Georgia. All but one player on this roster for Georgia Tech from the state of Georgia. 1 of 2 for Holsey.
And Georgia Tech's just excited to have those 4 premier post guys in there that they can depend upon. And so therefore, if they get in foul trouble,